Chapter 3. It seemed to Integrity that very little time had passed since Gallia had discovered her hiding place and had helped her to return there, but she couldn't trust her judgment of time. One day blended into the next. 1 week was indiscernible from the previous. She felt oddly safe, though for no logical reason, and she was content for the first time since she had left her home. Therefore, when Ben entered her room in a frenzy and began shoving clothes from her dresser into a plastic garbage bag, hissing at her to get her shoes on, Integrity's security was shattered. Fear clutched at her lungs, constricting them. She felt dizzy, and her mind seemed to go on strike. Ben glanced at her, and instantly regret crossed his face. Checking over his shoulder to make sure the door had latched securely, he approached her slowly. "I'm sorry, Integrity. Everything's okay." He stopped several feet from her, gazing intently into her eyes. "I shouldn't have acted like that. I'm just excited." When Integrity relaxed a bit, he smiled and said, "Where are your shoes? I'll get them for you." "What's going on? Where are we going?" Integrity pulled a pair of white socks and her sneakers on as Ben continued to throw her clothes into the plastic bag. Finishing his task, Ben shoved the drawer closed, then moved to the bathroom and began tossing in whatever he found there. "We're getting out of here." An excited smile spread across his face, making him look younger than usual. Integrity was on her feet in an instant. "We're leaving Westmarch? Really?" "We're out of here, Integrity. We're as good as gone." Finished in the bathroom, Ben snapped off the light and tossed the bag over his shoulder. "You ready?" A thrill pulsing through her veins, Integrity grinned. "You bet, let's go." When Ben held his hand out for her to take, she hesitated for half a second before taking it. Excitement shot through her like electricity, but she forced herself to keep a level head. This was important. Ben glanced quickly up and down the hall before leading Integrity out of the room. It seemed just a few seconds before he had her outside of the building. The bright sunlight caused her to wince involuntarily, but the warmth of the sun felt glorious as it poured through her skin. Ben squeezed her hand reassuringly, then started jogging across the perfectly manicured lawn, Integrity in tow. She felt horribly exposed here, but pressed forward nonetheless, trusting Ben's judgment. Entering the safety of the tree cover was welcome. Once they had weaved their way between tree trunks until they were thoroughly hidden, Ben stopped and looked at her and set down the bag. "Do you need to rest for a minute?" Trying unsuccessfully to disguise her labored breathing, Integrity shook her head back and forth. "I'm fine. Let's keep going." She tingled with awareness that he hadn't let go of her hand, despite the fact that she knew it was damp. "He must not find me disgusting. That's a good sign." "Are you sure? It's better if we keep going, but we can spare a minute or two." He looked back in the direction of the castle as he spoke, keeping his voice low. Swallowing air greedily, she replied, "I'm fine. Let's keep going. We don't want to get caught now." Branches and pine needles scraped her bare arms and occasionally caught on the plastic bag filled with her belongings. She wanted to make some witty remark about the bag looking more like Swiss cheese, but couldn't catch her breath to do so. Staying in a small room for months on end had wreaked havoc with her body. The muscles in her legs were burning, her shoulders and neck ached, and her joints complained persistently. This trip couldn't end quickly enough, as far as she was concerned, as long as it didn't end up back at Westmarch. Before long, Ben led her to a rough dirt path and a nondescript car. While he tossed her bag into the trunk, she slid into the passenger seat, grateful to get off of her feet. Her pulse throbbed uncomfortably near her ear, and she felt disoriented. She closed her eyes and leaned her head back against the headrest. She felt the car shift as Ben lowered himself into the driver's seat, then heard his door shut. When several seconds passed without the car starting, she opened her eyes to look at Ben, thinking there was a problem. He was giving her the oddest look, unlike anything she'd ever seen before. "What?" she asked. Seeming to snap back to reality, Ben said, "Oh, sorry." He turned his attention to sliding the key into the ignition and starting the car. Integrity shivered involuntarily. Half of her liked the way he had looked at her so intently, but the other half felt uncomfortable. She turned to look out the windshield, gathering her thoughts. After a few minutes of slow driving down the bumpy, twisting track, she asked, "So, where are we going?" She studiously kept her gaze on the trees around them as a single bead of sweat trickled down her side. "As far away from here as we can get." His voice was more tense than she'd ever heard it before, making her shift nervously. She'd never seen Ben like this before. He was usually so carefree. Desperate to break the awkward silence, she asked, "How did you get the car? Not that I'm not glad, I am." "Stop rambling," she chided herself. "There are lots of vehicles at Westmarch. This one is old enough to not be missed, but not old enough to be valuable. I've been trying for a long time to get access to a car." She saw him glance briefly at her before focusing on the road again. She tried to appear as though she hadn't noticed. "I didn't say anything about it before now because I didn't want to get your hopes up. I figured I'd get a car eventually, but it could be a long time. It was better this way." Not knowing what to say, Integrity made a non-committal sound. What could she say? She was getting away from Westmarch, and if all went well, would never be going back. What more could she ask for? "So why do I feel so uneasy?" They drove over an hour before they exited the woods. Integrity was grateful that she hadn't tried to hoof it away from Westmarch. She never would have made it. When she'd mentioned this to Ben, he had laughed and made some wry remark about not being outdoorsy himself. The long silences grew less and less awkward as Integrity became accustomed to them. They drove through a small town or two before gaining access to a relatively isolated freeway. It had been several hours of driving past town after town, and Integrity's lower body was beginning to lose feeling. When Ben signaled to exit, she sat up straighter and looked around. She couldn't see much off of the ramp, a gas station or two, a distant house. Ben parked in front of a pump, turned the car off, then easily climbed out. She noticed him pull a wallet from one of the pockets of his dress slacks before he shut the door. She was uncomfortably hungry, though her time with Glegnar made that easy to ignore, but she had more pressing needs at the moment. She sat in the car, undecided, before sighing and getting out of the car. Ben looked up immediately. "I'm just gonna run inside for a minute." She kept her eyes focused on the roof of the car, flicking absently at a small piece of paint sticking up from a rust spot. Ben stuck the hose back in the machine and said, "I'll come with you." Integrity could feel a blush pricking her cheeks. "Oh, it's okay. I'll only be a second." Why am I having this conversation with a hottie? He must know I need to pee." He twisted the cap back on the gas tank and shut the door. "I want a drink. Can I get you anything?" He walked around the back of the car and waited for her to join him. Staring furiously at the ground, she caught up and they walked into the gas station. By this time, having stood up, she couldn't take the time to be sly and look at a few of the aisles, but instead made a beeline for the dingy sign hanging from the ceiling, the T barely visible in bathroom. When she had finished, Ben was waiting for her, plastic grocery bag in hand. "Ready?" He smiled. She forced herself to smile back, mortified. "I didn't know what you liked, so I just grabbed some stuff. I hope that's okay?" "You didn't have to, but thanks." He held the door for her, then opened the car door for her. Her stomach gave a small lurch, not being used to this kind of treatment. Boys had never paid her much attention, let alone treated her like a princess. She felt kind of stupid, but a nice stupid. The sun was disappearing behind a distant mountain by this time, and Integrity was grateful for the jerky and chips that Ben had bought at the gas station. While hunger was easy to ignore, it was always nice to be full. "How come you're not eating more?" Integrity asked. "Aren't boys supposed to be bottomless pits?" Ben slapped his flat stomach with a laugh. "I must be abnormal. It doesn't take much at all to keep me going." "Oh, great," she teased back. "Now I'm the pig, just what every girl wants." Ben glanced at her, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear before returning his gaze to the road. "A pig you most certainly are not. You're much too pretty." Integrity was grateful for the dim light of early night, grateful for its ability to hide her expression. Did he really just say that? He can't have meant what I think, though. He was just being nice. Get it together, girl. Trying to gloss over his comment, she held an open bag of chips out toward him. "Well, make a girl feel better and eat some more chips." "All right, if you're going to make me," he joked, taking a handful from the bag. Things were tense at Westmarch. Rumors flew wildly among the servants, many and varied. Several were more popular than others, including things as extreme as a death in the royal family. But whatever had everyone in an uproar was kept tight under lock and key. No one could tell for sure what was causing the stress and short tempers among the elite of the castle. The tension was undeniable regardless. Gallia was constantly being hit up for information by those who worked under her. She knew very little, but, being adept at blending into the background, she was privy to more information than most. From her observations, she knew that the only people who were upset without cause were those who knew the royal family well, lending credence to the death theory. But why would they hide something like that? An event of such magnitude should be shared with all, great and small, to mourn together. No, a royal death was unlikely in her eyes. Secrets were few in Westmarch, and those that existed were guarded too jealously for any reasonable hypothesis to come close to. Whatever it was that had the hierarchy in a stir would be something vitally important, and Gallia could not imagine what that might be. As she walked through the laundry, she heard snatches of conversation. One maid was telling another that someone was violently upset because she had been snubbed by Lady Jida, while another butler asserted that the king's son was indeed dead, thereby leaving the ascension to the throne up for grabs. Gallia recalled that she had not seen or heard of the crown prince for some weeks, but that was not so unusual. Such a powerful young man had little to hold him at Westmarch, certainly not for all of his time. While it was possible, she still did not believe him to be dead. The king and queen were no fools. They had surely made plans in case of their son's untimely demise. No, the throne would not be open to any who could win the approval of the king. Such an accusation was wildly out of the realm of possibility. Turning another corner, she absently traced a finger along the top of a table, then glanced down to make sure there was no dust. Arriving at her destination, she stood squarely in front of the door and rapped 3 times before sliding her pass-key into the lock and turning it. Glancing briefly around the room, Gallia turned and shut the door behind her. "Integrity," she called. A few steps forward showed that the bathroom door was open, the light off. "Integrity?" she called again, thinking that the girl might have been startled and taken cover. A more thorough investigation showed that the girl was nowhere in the room. Gallia sat down on the edge of the chair, puzzled. Where could the girl have gone, and why? Gallia couldn't even be sure that the door had been locked when she came. She had automatically used her key. After a moment, Gallia stood, made the bed, then walked to the door. Switching the light off, she exited the room and closed the door firmly behind her, leaving it unlocked. Perhaps Integrity had just ventured out for a moment and would return shortly. Anyone entering the room would have no hint that it was occupied unless they opened the drawers or closet. "I'll have to find Ben," she muttered to herself as she set off down the hallway, back the way she had come. Shortly after 11 o'clock that night, according to the dashboard clock in the car, Ben pulled to a stop in front of a nondescript hotel in an even more nondescript town. After putting the car into park, he turned slightly toward Integrity. "I'll just run in and get a room. I'll be right back." He smiled at her, the faintly red light from the vacancy sign showing the planes of his face in sharp relief. "Okay." Integrity watched him walk around the front of the car and into the hotel's office, where he moved out of her line of sight. She scooted deeper into the bucket seat, grateful for the nearing respite. Riding for hours in a car was not her idea of fun, or, for that matter, comfort. She didn't know for sure how long they had driven, hundreds of miles easily, nor their general location. She'd seen signs announcing towns that sounded vaguely familiar, and she assumed they had crossed a state border at some point, but she must have missed the sign. It was disconcerting to realize that things she had taken for granted, like knowing what state she was in, were no longer assured. Ben returned shortly, a small envelope with a green plastic room key peeking from the top. He slid into his seat, closed the door, then eased the car into gear. "Here we go." The room was on the second floor, toward the back of the small motel. Integrity was thankful that she was too tired to really care how nice the room was. It had always bothered her to sleep on sheets other people had used, even if they had been washed. Even the dim lighting of the room made her close her eyes reflexively. She was relieved to see that there were 2 beds. One issue taken care of, she thought. Ben dropped the plastic bag with her things, plus another bag filled with his clothing, onto the floor near the bathroom doorway. Well, it's not much, but it'll do. He stretched his arms above his head, his shirt lifting to reveal a small strip of tanned skin above his belt. Integrity looked away automatically, then felt stupid. Who cared if she saw part of his stomach? Oh no, someone call the police. Slut on the loose, she mocked herself. She was embarrassed again when she used the bathroom that night, terrified that he might hear something. Quit being so stupid. Everyone pees. When she came back out, he was stretched out on the bed closest to the door, his head propped up against the headboard. He flipped aimlessly through the channels on TV before offering her the remote. You want to try? There's not much on this time of night. Integrity yawned, shaking her head. Right now, all I want to do is sleep. I hear that. Ben kicked off his shoes, using his opposite foot as leverage, letting the shoes fall where they may. He slipped under his blankets before smiling and saying, See you in the morning. Integrity smiled back as she climbed into her own bed, then rolled over to turn off the lamp that sat on the table between them. She'd forgotten just how hard it was to sleep in a hotel. The bed didn't feel right, the temperature was never right, and the walls were so thin. She could hear every car that drove by, though they were few and far between. Every time Ben shifted or rolled over, she tensed automatically. Her eyes felt bone dry and were prickling with pain, but she couldn't seem to keep them closed. Every noise she heard or thought she heard made them snap open, and she'd peer intently into the inky blackness. She didn't know how much time had passed before Ben climbed out of bed. At first, she thought he was making a pit stop, but then she vaguely saw his form bending over, putting on his shoes, she assumed. She forced herself to lay still. Ben couldn't know she was so paranoid that she hadn't fallen asleep this whole time. When he moved to the door and quietly slid the deadbolt back, she sat straight up in bed. "Where are you going?" she hissed, wondering why she felt like she had to be quiet. Ben stopped and turned toward her. "I thought you were asleep. Did I wake you up?" "No, I was awake." Ben walked back through the dark room, then sat on the edge of his bed, facing her. "Did I scare you?" No, I'm fine. I guess I'm just being nosy." Integrity gave a nervous laugh, then immediately wanted to pull it back. Why am I acting like such an idiot? "Have you gotten any sleep at all?" Hearing the concern in his voice, Integrity quickly lied. "Yeah, here and there. I don't know why I woke up just now." "It was probably me. I'm sorry. I just got hungry and thought I'd run out and try to find somewhere that's open this time of night. I didn't want to bother you. You've had a really long day." "Oh." Integrity felt more stupid than ever. Since when did she become so dependent on him that he couldn't even leave the room without her throat seizing up, restricting her airflow? "Will you be okay if I go?" "Yeah, I'll be fine." "No, I won't. I might have a heart attack." He stood and walked toward the doorway once more. "Can I bring you anything back?" "No, I'm good." Don't leave me." "Okay, I don't know how long I'll be. Who knows how far I'll have to go. Try to get some sleep, huh?" Integrity forced herself to lay back down, the whole time her body aching to spring back up. "Stop it! You can't invite yourself along. Pull on your big girl panties and knock it off. You'll be fine." Ben walked out of the door and closed it firmly behind him. She heard his footsteps fade as he walked to the nearby cement stairs. Shortly she heard a car starting, reversing, then accelerating as it pulled away. The next thing she knew, it was morning, and Ben was laying in the bed across from her, watching her silently. "Please don't let me be drooling." He gave her a comfortable smile. "Morning." "How long have you been awake?" she asked, sitting up. "What time is it?" He laughed. "Chill, it's all good. I'm glad you were able to get some sleep." Making an effort to smooth her hair down, Integrity relaxed a bit. "Me too. I don't even remember falling asleep." "Do you ever?" Integrity grinned sheepishly. "I guess not." Ben sat up and she caught a glimpse of skin. She ducked her head immediately and headed for the bathroom. "I'll just get ready." After showering, she came back out and Ben had his shirt back on. He was watching a news broadcast, but he snapped it off when she came out. Springing from bed, he grabbed his bag and headed for the bathroom. "My turn?" She gestured toward the open bathroom door. "It's all yours." After putting her toothbrush and the like back in her bag, she looked around the room. Now what? She could hear the shower running in the bathroom. Out of sheer nervous energy, she decided to make the beds. That completed, she had just put her bag on top of the coverlet when Ben emerged from the bathroom. His short hair was still damp. Seeing the beds, he laughed again. "Who are you, Becky Homecki?" Integrity just shrugged, not knowing what to say. "Are you ready to go?" She nodded, picked up her bag, and the pair of them left the room. After a brief stop to check out, they were on the road once more. After stopping at a fast food place for breakfast, Integrity asked Ben, "So where exactly are we going?" Ben shrugged one shoulder, taking a sip of his orange juice. "I really don't know. Right now all I can think is to get as far away from Westmarch as we can." Integrity nodded. "That makes sense. If we need to make tracks, why don't we take turns driving? Then we won't waste time in hotels." "That's sweet of you to offer, but no." He smiled apologetically. "I know where we're likely to run into people from Westmarch, what places to avoid. Although, I admit, we're going to have to start avoiding hotels." "Why? So we don't leave a trail?" Ben glanced over his shoulder before signaling and changing lanes. "Partly." He glanced at her, grinning sheepishly. "Mostly it's that I didn't bring much money. Better to sleep in the car and have money for food than have a hotel room and be hungry." Integrity felt uncomfortable, guilty. You know, if you take me to my parents, you can leave me there, and they'll reimburse you for everything you've spent." Ben adjusted the rear-view mirror unnecessarily. "Do you miss them?" "Sure, of course I do. It's been a long time since I've seen them." He shifted uncomfortably. "I wish I could take you there, Integrity, but I can't. It would just put them in danger. Can't you see that?" His brow was furrowed. "You mean they'd be that desperate to get me back that they'd hurt my parents?" Her appetite suddenly ebbing, she set her food down in her lap. Ben sat quietly for a few minutes, obviously thinking. Finally, just when Integrity thought she'd burst, he sighed. "I wish I could shelter you from all of this, that I could tell you everything would be fine, but that's not fair to you." Panic began to build up in her chest. "But I'm just me. I'm not anybody important. Why would they want me back so badly? What could I possibly offer them?" "These people are nuts. They are extremely protective of their little cult. It's not so much that you're you that's the problem, it's that you left. They'll want both of us back at any cost." He looked over at her for a few seconds before returning his attention to the road. "The only thing we can do right now is try to find somewhere to stay where they don't have any contacts, and just lay low. Hopefully they'll lose interest." Thoughts tumbled incoherently through Integrity's head. It had never occurred to her that she might be endangering her family by her escape. "I thought they'd make a cursory search out of duty, then let things be. What if they go after my family? Isn't there some way I can warn them?" Ben ran his hand over his hair a few times. "I don't know. I'll try to come up with something, but everything I can think of can be traced. If they find out that you are in contact with your parents, that will put them in even more danger. If they don't think you've talked to your mom and dad, they might just hang back and wait. Your parents might not be in any real danger at all." She wanted to kick something, but was acutely aware of how stupid she would look if she did. The last thing she wanted was for Ben to think she was throwing a temper tantrum like a toddler. What am I supposed to do? If I tell my parents to watch out, they could get hurt. If I don't, they could still get hurt. I'm only 17. I'm not supposed to have to deal with this crap. Ben and Integrity had been on the road for roughly a week, by her calculations, when he'd unexpectedly stopped at a park and had announced that they needed to have some fun. The idea seemed so foreign, so out of place in her current situation, that Integrity was cautious at first, not sure it was acceptable to have fun. The hard black rubber of the swing seat pushing against her sides as she grew increasingly dizzy from the movement made things seem oddly right. Watching Ben fly from his moving swing, arms and legs flailing comically as he arced through the air, brought laughter bursting to the surface. Doubled over, trying desperately to not fall from her perch, Integrity laughed until she thought she would be sick, which made her laugh all the more. Feeling her swing gently halted in its progress, she straightened up and looked into Ben's eyes. She found it hard to breathe, until he told her he'd race her to the slide. It was while Ben was stuck inside of the tube, the couple laughing convulsively, that several men appeared silently around either side of the slide. Integrity only uttered Ben's name once, before her arms were pinned behind her back, and she felt herself being propelled toward the SUV with tinted windows. She tried to scream, and the pain in her shoulders increased exponentially.